Welcome, everybody, to the Cone of Shame Veterinary Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Andy Roark. Guys, I got a great one for you. I'm here today with Dr. Petra Harms, and we are talking about AI governance. Guys, as Petra says, what is the quality control that we're looking at for AI? What testing has been done on any of these AI products that we're now using in our clinics? We're taking them in, we're putting them to work, but do we know their accuracy? Is there a standard of accuracy that we're okay with? Nothing is being enforced. You know, people ask me, they say, well, Andy, you like using an AI scribe. Which ones are the best in terms of medical accuracy or reporting? And I have no idea. It's kind of wide open. Instead, I found a lot of products that I really like and have really enjoyed using. I think Petra's questions are really good. Also, I will tell you this, and I think this is important. Petra loves AI. She is not someone who's saying we shouldn't do this. This shouldn't be the way forward. Let's all go back to pencil and paper. Better yet, let's carve our records into stone with a chisel. She's not that person. She is an AI fan who is really thinking critically about how do we want to implement AI into our practices? How do we do this the right way the first time so that we uphold our medical standards, so that we uphold our patient privacy and client privacy? And just anyway, a lot of really fascinating thoughts that I think this is the time to have them and to discuss them. And so anyway, I think you guys will really enjoy this. I really did. It's a whole nother way of looking at AI enthusiasm and start to say, let's maybe pump the brakes a little bit here and start thinking about what success looks like and what quality control looks like. And so anyway, let's get into this episode.
This is your show. We're glad you're here. We want to help you in your veterinary career. Welcome to the Cone of Shame with Dr. Andy Roark.
Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Petra Harms. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Andy. Thank you.
I am so glad to have you here. You are one of those hidden gems in my life that I came across. I met you through LinkedIn. I think it was so I wrote an article about 3 things that I think are most interesting in vet medicine today. And I wrote about mid-level practitioners. I wrote about what comes behind AI scribes. And we'll talk about that more in a second. And then I wrote about a distributive model of education. So vet schools sort of farming out students to practices to get their education. And I think that was what I had written. And you reached out through LinkedIn and said, hey, I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about the AI scribes and what goes into that and what the future looks like there. And that's when I became aware of you. And I've been reading your stuff since then. I've seen a lot of the conversations and things you have on LinkedIn. You are a veterinarian. You are a practicing veterinarian. You are in Vancouver Island. And you also are the founder of VetMaite, which is sort of an AI literacy hub, as you sort of describe it. You and I have talked a couple of times. I just really like your ideas. It's fascinating to me to have someone whose interest is like a self-proclaimed passion for AI governance and ethical AI use. And I was like, what does that even mean? So I have really enjoyed diving into what that means. But let me go ahead and start at a high level. And why don't you go ahead and sort of lay it out? Petra, when you say that you are interested in ethical AI use or AI governance, explain what is that, first of all, and what problem does that solve?
Oh my goodness, that's such a loaded question. Okay,
but it's really important. Like it sets the groundwork for everything else.
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, I think everybody's aware right now that that artificial intelligence is making inroads in veterinary medicine, human medicine, the world. I mean, it's happening everywhere. And I first became interested in it just a couple years ago, actually. And as a practicing veterinarian, it was a little bit on my periphery. And the more I looked into it, these tools that were available, the more I realized that, there's so much enthusiasm for what artificial intelligence can do for veterinary medicine, for practitioners. But I also recognize that there's actually very little by way of, a responsible framework or a logical way of integrating this technology into practice safely. And I mean, I'm of the vintage, I suppose, that I remember when regular practice that was paper and pencil practice was transitioned to electronic medical records, and I do remember the I suppose the growing pains that happened when the last technological evolution happened in VetMed with EHRs. So I saw this new opportunity coming up with artificial intelligence influencing veterinary medicine, and I kind of figured that we can't afford to make the same mistake twice. We can't afford to take this opportunity to improve veterinary practice for veterinarians and squander it essentially by implementing it without due consideration, without making sure that the veterinarian is at the center of the focus, without making sure that the veterinarian's concerns are heard, and as veterinarians, we're scientists, right? We like to see data, and I wasn't seeing a lot of data coming out of this AI integration push, right? There's very little by way of performance metrics. There's very little by way of test results that an AI technology provider can give to a buyer to say this is how well this product performs. And because artificial intelligence, because of what it is and how it's developed, contains baked in flaws that we still have to, as an industry, wrap our brains around, such as bias and hallucinations. Those flaws can cause errors, and those errors can come back and bite us in the butt. As veterinarians, they can harm our patients. So the idea of responsible and ethical integration of artificial intelligence into veterinary medicine comes from a recognition that there right now it's a very loosely, in fact, unregulated industry. A recognition that lax approach to quality control is potentially harmful to our veterinary users, but also from an approach of enthusiasm. I mean, I love the idea of using these tools to help veterinarians practice more efficiently, get rid of a lot of the busy work that we flush down the toilet every day in order to get our jobs done. It comes from a two-pronged approach. I want this industry to succeed. I want the technology to succeed. And responsible and ethical integration is, in my mind, the path towards that happening, rather than trying to fit things in ad hoc without some kind of structure.
Yeah, I think the reason that you've been so interesting for me is that here you are and you're talking very much about AI regulation and governance and quality control and things like that. And it is so obvious in the things that you write that you are a big fan of AI. You are not the person who, I don't like this, I hate it, you kids get off my lawn, take that thing with you, it makes too much noise. Like that's not you at all. You're like, I really, really like this. And guys, we want to do it well. And so talk to me a little bit. I think so. Let me sort of lay down kind of where I was coming from. So when I wrote the piece about the most interesting things in vet medicine, to me, the most interesting thing regarding AI is it's not the use of the AI scribes necessarily. I've been really impressed with them. To your point, I think this is a great way to reduce workload, and just the administrative burden. And it's just I can sing the praise of an AI scribe. Again, I also know that it's early on. I have sort of limited expectations in what it can do as far as, everything needs to be checked. And I think it'll always be that way. But I really am a big fan of these products. The thing I found most interesting was when I went to the VMX conference and WVC conference early this year, one of the most common conversation that I had just again and again and again was about people who were like, all right, so you're using AI scribes and all of this information is being taken in. What do we do with that information, Andy? The opportunities are limitless. And there are conversations around, and again, I think they all came from good intent, I think. But it was things like, oh man, we could listen to the vets, or AI listen to the veterinarians in the exam room and make suggestions on how they might better communicate with the pet owners. Or we could have the technicians use this, and then we could do technician training, or also doctor training, and we can build out communication modules based on these things. And we could also talk to individual doctors because we would know that they're not recommending these products, or they're not doing this, or they're not having this conversation in an effective way. And it just goes on to, we could not only listen to the conversations you're having, but then we could look at what actually shows up on the invoice and say, well, you talked about this, but pet owners are not following through on this recommendation. Let's look at the way you're talking about the specific recommendation. And part of me goes, that's great. Another part of me goes, oh my God, we're about to get micromanaged in a way that's going to make everybody just quit because it'd be terrible. Again, it's the implementation. There's another group that I've talked with, and they talked about it a while ago. You could actually use AI scribes to measure wellness of the team in the room. You start listening for burnout language. You listen for if the doctor is having steadily shorter and shorter conversations. You say, what does that mean? Is this person, are they feeling depressed? Are they starting to burn out? Are they losing enthusiasm? Are they disengaging from their job? And again, it's good or bad. I think the devil really is in the details, but I was kind of shaken a little bit by thinking, oh my gosh, the amount of information that is about to be collected and to be able to be processed in a way it never has been before. I don't know, to me, when you sort of talked about AI regulation or best practices, AI governance, I thought, I can see now the benefits of having sort of a focused approach. So as I sort of lay all those things down, I want to see where is your sort of head at as I lay that stuff down? Are you in agreement that these are some of the things that are interesting? Do you think I'm way off base with sort of having some of these concerns? Let's sort of start to unpack it.
Oh, Andy, you're spot on. What you've brought up really brings to fore the idea of bringing veterinarians into kind of a position of knowledge and empowerment with artificial intelligence. Veterinarians, with the use of AI, and these tools are important, they're critical to improving our quality of life and quality of practice, but they're also changing the role of the veterinarian. We're not just caregivers anymore. We're not just doctors anymore. We are generators of data, and we are generators of data in more ways than just what we now choose to type up. We are generators of data in the sense that our conversations may be recorded, right? And the data in those conversations is incredibly useful, right? As you said, I mean, you can mine that data for, not just things that you did or did not recommend, but even your tone of voice. You can mine the data, for example, the actual interaction between the client and yourself, and what the client says, and how that influences what they are willing to purchase, right? And this isn't something new, right? You think about Alexa. When you have Alexa in your house and you're asking Alexa for certain questions, all of a sudden you have that tendency for certain advertisements to pop up that you don't remember requesting, right?
Yeah.
So the mining of audio data is a real thing. We are now becoming data generators when it comes to these scribes. And it's important for veterinarians to, be aware of the potential for that data to be used, be aware that they should be empowered to ask what their data is and will be used for, by these companies. Is there any possibility that their data will be saved and then mined for information down the line and potentially sold? Because as they say in AI, data is definitely the new gold. And there also should be a framework where in general in veterinary medicine, the concept of a responsible AI company or AI provider is accountable to the veterinarian and to the user of the technology for the ethical collection or lack of collection of that data, right? So at the moment, we are counting on, the AI technology providers to do the right thing, quote unquote. And don't get me wrong, there's many, and I've met many amazing startup founders that have all of the right, ideas. But, as businesses go, businesses get sold, information gets transferred without any kind of official framework as to what is ethical and right and what is focused on the benefit of the veterinarian and the patient and client by extent, then we're setting ourselves up for big cracks in our due diligence for ourselves and for our clients.
What's funny as you say this is, like we are generators of data. I just think like, what would a pharma company pay to have, to look for links between, in these appointments, your product ended up on the invoice, like it got sold. And we will search all of these appointments and find common or repeated phrases. Like what are the things that the veterinarian or the technician says in the appointment that turns into a sale of this pharma product and versus the ones that don't. And that people would pay for that. That they would absolutely love a breakdown of these are the things that happen when your product gets sold or gets purchased by the pet owner. And it's just, I'm not trying to throw shade on pharma or anything, but it's just off the top of my head thinking about the value of that data that's not necessarily directly to the veterinarians. I go, oh, that's really interesting. Petra, we're looking at more and more corporate vet practices and multi-site vet clinics and things like that. I think about the value of that data. That's, when you think about the individual exam room, looking at that at scale, let's say that you're one of the practice groups that has 100 vet hospitals. You have no way of being in the rooms and hearing what's going on, but you suddenly have this ability at scale to really look and start to break down performance in a way that's well beyond what you used to be. But I don't know how the veterinarians are necessarily going to feel about that. You know what I mean? I think it goes back again in my mind to sort of how people use the data. But I got into vet medicine to support people and have relationships with pet owners and to sort of be a real resource for them. I didn't necessarily get into vet medicine to generate the maximum amount of money that I can generate. And I know that there are veterinarians that work for companies that totally get that. I don't know, there are veterinarians who work for companies that do not get that. And they really are saying, guys, we need to 10x our investment here. How do we do that? And so I guess my question for you is, when you think about sort of regulation, Petra, are you mostly thinking at like a professional level of across the board, these are the types of things that veterinary medicine should be thinking of? And that would be things around the line of, product accuracy, things like that. Or is there some sort of deeper level of privacy that people should be able to expect, even if they're working for, another company that is technically the purchaser of the scribe software?
I think what we should be looking for is really an approach from both directions. And I've used this comparison before, but AI isn't the first time we've run into potentially dangerous tools that have been very, very useful.
Yeah, totally.
You look at,
I think that's a great way to put it. Is the internet is I remember the concerns of the internet is like, I don't want people to know about me, and I don't want them to be able to email me and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There's the internet, and then let's go down to something even more basic, right? Medications, drugs and medications, right? We as veterinarians know that drugs and medications are incredibly helpful. They're essential, but we also know that they can carry the potential for harm, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at how the veterinary industry regulates drugs and medications, and there are multi-stage approaches to this regulation. Yes, there is top-down regulation in the sense that the veterinary medical industry has a strong kind of science-based push against things like inappropriate use of antibiotics, right? Mm-hmm. Then you go down one step, you look at regulatory bodies and they enforce the safe storage and documentation and prescription of controlled drugs, right? And then you also see an individual responsibility that sits with the veterinarian and with the actual practitioner to know the side effects of the medications that they are using. And making sure that there are no negative interactions with other drugs that the patient is on, right? So the allocation of responsibility, who you saddle with the responsibility to do certain things with medications, is tiered throughout the industry. And in my mind, the same thing needs to happen with artificial intelligence. We're starting to get some movement from the upper levels in terms of the CVMA coming out with a position statement. The AVMA has created a emerging technologies task force to address kind of the overarching messages about responsible use of AI, and I think that's going to start to trickle down through the levels of corporations, hopefully paying attention and creating responsible use frameworks for AI in their companies. And then, at the bottom, having the veterinarian know that they are ultimately responsible for any privacy loss that happens as a result of AI, for any errors that happens as a result of using AI, and having them empowered to make decisions based on that knowledge. But that all that all depends on how much information these veterinarians can get about artificial intelligence. What are their risks? What are the benefits? What are potential pitfalls? Do they know that if they use an AI tool for a diagnosis or a treatment or a let's say even medical recording, if there is an error, they are liable for that error? It's not the company, it's not the technology, it is their liability. And so what kind of tools can we put into their hands in order to let them do their due diligence? And right now, there are no tools.
It's like more AI. That's the answer.
Yeah, exactly. You have the computers monitor the computers, right?
Exactly.
So right now there are no tools, but that's part of the push. I mean, there should be performance benchmarks. There should be standards by which your average veterinarian can say, how does this tool measure up to these standards, and can I trust it, right? There should be a guidance information from these regulatory bodies and these associations to help veterinarians evaluate the technology and say, what are my potential risks, right? And how do I manage them?
If you were a vet practice owner right now, and you were sitting here and you're like, boy, Andy's been talking about how much he loves AI scribes recently. Mm-hmm. And I was really on board, but now I don't know. But yeah, what advice would you have for practice owners? Are you still in a place where you think, yes, I think these tools are valuable, or are you at a place where you'd say, I think they're valuable, and this is the due diligence I would do?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be option B, Dr. Roark. Okay. So yes, I think they're incredibly valuable. I think they're incredibly useful. I think they are godsend, right? I mean, it's ironically, it seems like we're using the second wave of technology, which is AI, to try to fix some of the challenges that came from the first wave of technology, which is the EHRs, right? I mean, it's at first we had to generate too much data with the EHRs, and now this is decreasing the data that we have to put in, right? And I definitely think that that as a practice owner, if I were to start with an AI tool, I would sit down and ask those hard questions. What are you doing with my data? Is my data being taken off site, or is it being scrubbed as soon as it's being transcribed, right? Is it being collected for training purposes, right? And if so, what kind of security are to store that data? Is there a possibility that you will sell at some point and sell that data? I don't know how many of you have read about the 23andMe situation where 23andMe kept the data of users safe, but of course they are now essentially, I think they're bankrupt or going out of business. So that data is potentially up for sale at to the highest bidder, right? So number one, asking those hard questions about data privacy and not being afraid to push and really look for accountability. That's number one. And that's not to say that the accountability isn't there. The important thing is that you do your due diligence. Because again, any loss of privacy for your client, any mistakes or other bad consequences from the use of the AI rests with your license, right? The other thing as a practice owner that I would do is I would say, what is the frequency of your errors? What's your error rate? Do you have an error rate? Are you keeping track of those things? If you run into an error, what's your error reporting system? Is it robust, right? Are you actively seeking to get information from your users about when errors happen. And then what are you doing with that? Are you, working with your technology to make it less error prone, right? All of those things are I think part of our due diligence that we have to do as consumers of this technology. And this isn't limited only to the tools that we purchase. It is also it extends to things like ChatGPT in a vet clinic, right? ChatGPT doesn't give you any assurances about privacy when you put information into it. So the idea of even though it's super attractive, let's put this client's entire 52-page medical record into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize for us. You've essentially released that client's private medical information onto the world or onto whoever it is that is controlling the data from ChatGPT. Yeah. So these questions that you're asking about safety and liability and an ethical focus, they're not just limited to to companies that are aimed at providing veterinary AI. They extend to all AI-related services used in your clinic.
Yeah, Petra, thanks for talking through this with me. I appreciate it. There's so much here, and it's such a fascinating time. I think things are changing fast, and they're only going to continue to change faster. And it always feels like we're sort of behind as far as what questions should we be asking here. And so I think you're doing great work. I really love to hear the way that you think. Where can people find you online? If they want to continue to read your thoughts. And I said I see you posting a lot and talking a lot, and I always benefit from your insights. I love the fact that you're paying a lot of attention to physicians and the human side of medicine and kind of how they're using AI on the human side. And I think that's a real service in the way you sort of condense that stuff and put it out in sort of bite-sized pieces. So yeah, where's the best place for people to find you?
No, thank you, Andy. So LinkedIn is probably the most reliable way to reach me if you want to reach out and connect. I'm very happy to chat. In terms of the website that I have that has some basic, AI foundational literacy lessons, that's vetmate.com. So those are two, resources that are connected to me. Definitely LinkedIn is the one that I'm most responsive to. Otherwise, my email inbox gets a little bit crowded. So yeah, absolutely happy to reach out, happy to chat. Also very interested, not just in North American practice, but worldwide. AI in veterinary medicine has potential benefits not just in private care practice, but in agriculture, and wildlife practice or wildlife medicine. So this isn't limited to North America. I think we have a lot to learn from different regions of the world, different countries, and how they're integrating their AI. And I'm very keen to connect with people worldwide. So yes, looking forward to seeing you there. And Andy, if there's anything more you want to talk about, I'm always here.
Oh, thank you so much, Petra. Guys, thanks for being here, everybody. Take care of yourselves, gang. And that's it. That's what I got for you, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something away from it. Thanks to Petra for being here. Guys, be well, everybody. I will talk to you soon.